Firstly, you should know that this deviant talk of the Mu'tazila about sustenance is based on the denial of qadar. It's an offshoot. So the fundamental creed of Mu'tazila is denial of qadar. Because of denying destiny, they had several offshoots in their convictions, such as believing that there are creatures that were never sustained by Allah, believing that Allah doesn't create the evil, believing that Allah creates some things and not other things. He creates the bodies but not the actions. Believing that the domino effect is a creation of the slave or has no creator at all. All those weird blasphemies and others, they stem from the denial of the qadar. يقول, he says, وَلَمَّا كَانَ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ يَجْرِي بِمَشِيئَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And when it was the case that everything runs by the will of Allah, exalted is He, وَالْحَرَامُ شَيْءٍ, and the haram is something, دَاخِلٌ تَحْتَ ذَلِكَ الْعُمُومِ, something included under that generality. فَقَالَ أَهْلُ-السُّنَّةِ الْحَرَامُ رِزْقٌ. Ahlus-Sunnah then said, the haram is provision. Take note here what was done. That is very basic argument, a very basic form of an argument. If you notice that, the presentation of the information, what did you have there? You had a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. That's a math problem. 1 + 1 = 2. What was said here? When it was that everything runs by the will of Allah, that's a premise. Let's say that's 2. Plus, the haram is something included under that generality. Let's say that's 1. So the answer is 3. 2 + 1 is 3. So what's 3 here? فَقَالَ أَهْلُ السُّنَّةِ الْحَرَامُ رِزْقٌ. The conclusion here is that the people of the Sunnah said, they have concluded that the haram is sustenance. Meaning, if sustenance is haram, its being haram does not take it out of being sustenance. وَكُلٌّ يَسْتَوْفِي رِزْقَهُ حَلَالًا أَوْ حَرَامًا. And each shall consume his sustenance, lawful or unlawful. Yastawfi here, consumes. وَلَا يُتَصَوَّرُ أَلَّا يَأْكُلَ إِنسَانٌ رِزْقَهُ. And it is not conceived, meaning it is not rational, that a person would not consume his sustenance. Then here, yastawfi means ya'kul. The second sentence gave us the tafsir. وَكُلٌّ يَسْتَوْفِي رِزْقَهُ وَلَا يُتَصَوَّرُ أَلَّا يَأْكُلَ إِنسَانٌ رِزْقَهُ. هذا هو. أو يأكل غيره رزقه, or that someone else would consume his sustenance. It is not conceived, it is not conceivable that a human being would not consume his sustenance. It is inconceivable. Nor is it conceivable that someone else would consume his sustenance. وهو بناء على أن الرزق عندنا الغذاء. Our argument is based on rizq, sustenance, being غذاء, nutrients. But still, even when he says غذاء here, and I'm translating as nutrients, doesn't mean vitamins, doesn't mean eating food. غذاء, and what's like that? What has that meaning? What has that concept? Just like you wear your clothing. You eat your food and you benefit from that. You wear your clothing and you benefit from that, for example. فَمَا قُدِّرَ أَنْ يَكُونَ غِذَاءَ الشَّخْصِ Whatever was predestined or predetermined to be the sustenance of a person, لَا يَصِيرُ غِذَاءً لِغَيْرِهِ It would not become someone else's nutrients. What was predestined to be the nutrients of a person would not become the nutrients of another. وَكَمَا يَتَغَذَّى الْإِنسَانُ بِالْحَلَالِ And just as one sustains himself or gets nutrients from the lawful, يَتَغَذَّى بِالْحَرَامِ He might also sustain himself or get sustenance from the unlawful. وَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَعَدَ الْعِبَادَ الرِّزْقَ الْمُطْلَقَ And Allah, exalted is He, has promised the slaves unrestricted sustenance or unlimited sustenance. إِلَّا أَنَّهُ تَعَالَى جَعَلَ أَسْبَابَ الْأَرْزَاقِ بِأَيْدِي الْعِبَادِ وَأَمَرَهُمْ أَنْ يَطْلُبُوهَا مِنْ وُجُوهِ حِلِّهَا However, Allah made the means to those provisions by the slave's own hand, by his exertion, by the slave's exertion. And He commanded the slaves to only seek the sustenance from the permissible ways. So sustenance can be obtained in so many ways. Whether you want to go and eat from the trash can, or you want to go and be a hermit in the wilderness, or you want to be a thief, etc. Allah Ta'ala made sustenance available. He is the sustainer. All of it is rizq. But He commanded the slaves to go about getting it in certain ways. وَأَمَرَهُمْ أَنْ يَطْلُبُوهَا مِنْ وُجُوهِ حِلِّهَا He commanded the slaves to seek the sustenance from its permissible ways. التي أطلق الشرع مباشرتها Those ways that the sacred law has sanctioned their engagement. فإذا أقدم العبد بحرصه وهواه وطلبه من غير وجهه And so if the slave steps forward by his covetousness and his lust, and he seeks it from other than its way, أوصل الله إليه من ذلك الوجه بناء على اختياره Allah will make the sustenance get to him in that way, based on his choice. So he got the sustenance. When we said Allah promised the slaves unrestricted or unlimited sustenance. Like the saying of Allah in Surah Al-Dhariyat, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ In the sky or from the sky comes your sustenance and that which you have been promised. This ayah is an ayah that the scholars have used for this talk. This talk of what they called right here الرزق المطلق. وعد العباد الرزق المطلق. Allah promised, very literally the statement is, Allah promised the slaves unrestricted sustenance or unlimited sustenance. So someone might take that, at least the translation, the wrong way. It means now, like I have just explained to you. Inshallah, that's clear. Yani, it means that the rizq can be obtained from qad yuqal unlimited ways. Allah is the one who makes it get to you whatever way. But He commanded you to abandon some ways. فَتَحَقَّقَ مَا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى مِنْ إِيصَالِ الرِّزْقِ. And so what Allah has promised in this scenario of making sustenance reach the slave has come true. Exalted is He. وَلَكِنْ يُعَاقِبُهُ عَلَى سُوءِ اخْتِيَارِهِ. However, Allah will punish him for his bad choice. وَمُخَالَفَتِهِ أَمْرَهِ. And for his opposing His command. وَعِنْدَ الْمُعْتَزِلَةِ الْحَرَامُ لَيْسَ بِرِزْقٍ. According to the Mu'tazila, the haram is not sustenance. وَجَازَ أَلَّا يَأْكُلَ رِزْقَهُ. And according to them, it is possible or valid that one would not consume his sustenance. وَيَأْكُلَ رِزْقَ غَيْرِهِ. And to them it is possible that one would consume someone else's sustenance. أَوْ يَأْكُلَ غَيْرُهُ رِزْقَهُ. Or that someone else would consume his sustenance. وَلَوْ كَانَ عِبَارَةً عَنِ الْمِلْكِ كَمَا قَالَتِ الْمُعْتَزِلَةِ لَمَا رُزِقَتِ الدَّوَابِ. And had sustenance been defined as ownership, as the Mu'tazila have said, then the beasts, the animals, would have never been provided for. لِعَدَمِ تَصَوُّرِ الْمِلْكِ لَهَا. Because ownership is not conceived for the animals. They don't own anything. وَفِيهِ خُلْفُ وَعْدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And then, if that were the case, that would be breaking the promise that Allah gave. Allah's promise would be broken. If that were the case, that sustenance is ownership, then the animals will never have been sustained, and then that would be the promise of Allah broken. What promise of Allah? وَهُوَ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى. Which is His saying, exalted is He. وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. There is no beast in the earth except that on Allah is its sustenance. So if sustenance is ownership, then the animals have never been sustained, though Allah says that the sustenance of every beast is on Him. فَإِنَّهُ يَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّ مَنْ أَكَلَ حَرَامًا طُولَ عُمُرِهِ فَقَدْ أَكَلَ رِزْقًا. This verse proves that whoever consumed the haram for the duration of his lifespan has consumed sustenance. This ayah proves that. So then, sustenance is not ownership. If it were, then the animals would not have been sustained, and then this ayah of the Quran would be untrue. And also, sustenance is not what's lawful. Because if sustenance was what's lawful, then whoever consumed the unlawful all of his life only was also never sustained. And then still this ayah would be untrue. Because the human being is a dabba. I translated it as beast because of the context I did because the beast is a dabba, but the human is a dabba also, even if the human is not a beast. If the human is not a beast. And it could be said that the human is not a beast because it is said man and beast. It is coined. That's a term coined, man and beast. But both man and beast are dabba. Because a dabba is whatever traverses the face of the earth. ويلزم المعتزلة على زعمهم هذا أن الظلمة عاشوا عمرهم وماتوا ولم يرزقوا. And so binding to the Mu'tazila, according to their claim, this claim of theirs is that the unjust people who have consumed only what is forbidden have lived their lives and died without ever having been provided for. مع أنهم أوجبوا اللطف على الله تعالى. Although the Mu'tazila in their conviction believe that it's obligatory on Allah to do what is best for the slave, to be merciful to the slave. According to them, Allah is obligated to do that. Exalted is He. Ta'ala. فيكون هو تعالى مانعا حق عبده المستحق عليه. So then, if someone lived his entire life consuming only the haram, according to the Mu'tazila, Allah would have prevented the slave from what the slave deserves from Allah. وَذَلِكَ ظُلُمٌ, and that's injustice. تَعَالَى اللَّهُ عَنْ ذَلِكَ, exalted is Allah from that. وَاللَّهُ تَعَالَى أَعْلَمُ.